The first time she asked me to stay the night, she was standing barefoot in the rain. I remember it clearly because I almost did not open the door. It was close to midnight in Austin, and the storm outside was loud enough to shake my windows. I thought it was just the wind hitting my porch light. But then I heard a soft knock. Slow. Careful. Almost nervous. When I opened the door, there she was. Emily Harper. My next-door neighbor. 35. Recently divorced. The woman I had been trying very hard not to think about for months. Her dark brown hair was wet and falling over her shoulders. She was wearing a light gray sweater that clung to her skin from the rain. Her eyes looked tired, but not weak, just tired in a way that made my chest tighten. "I'm sorry to bother you, Ryan," she said softly, "but can you stay at my place tonight?" I thought I heard her wrong. "Stay at your place?" She nodded and glanced back toward her house. All the lights were on, even the upstairs ones. "For a strange reason," she said, and tried to smile. "I just don't want to be alone." Quote. That was the moment my heart started beating too fast. I had moved into this small neighborhood 2 years ago after my breakup. Emily and her husband were still together back then. I would see them sometimes in the driveway. They did not look happy. They barely spoke. 6 months ago, he moved out. No yelling. No drama. Just a moving truck and silence. Since then, it had only been her and her golden retriever, Max. We became friendly in a normal neighbor way. Small talks. Borrowing tools. Waving while taking out trash. But sometimes, I would catch her looking at me a second too long. And sometimes, I knew I was doing the same. Still, I never crossed any line. And now she was standing on my porch in the rain, asking me to stay the night. I grabbed my jacket and followed her across the yard. Her house smelled like vanilla candles and clean laundry. Warm. Soft. It felt different from mine. More alive. Max ran over and wagged his tail like he approved of this situation. Emily closed the door and locked it. Then she locked it again. "You okay?" I asked. She nodded, but her fingers were still wrapped tight around the lock. "It's stupid," she said. "I know it sounds stupid. Tell me." She walked into the living room and sat on the edge of her couch. The TV was on but muted. The storm outside flashed light through her windows. "Ever since the divorce," she said quietly, "I keep feeling like someone is in the house at night." That made my body tense. "Someone?" She looked embarrassed. "Not really. I mean, I don't see anyone, but I hear things. Footsteps upstairs, doors moving, and tonight it felt worse." I listened carefully. The house was silent except for rain and thunder. "You think someone broke in?" I checked everything. Windows are locked, doors are locked, alarm is on. But when the storm started, the power flickered, and she paused. Her voice got softer. "I just didn't want to be alone tonight." That last sentence felt heavier than the rest. This was not about footsteps. This was about loneliness. I sat down next to her, close but not touching. "You don't have to be alone," I said. Her eyes met mine, and for a second the air felt thick. There had always been something unspoken between us, a tension that both of us pretended not to notice. Late summer evenings when we talked too long by the mailbox, the way she laughed at my dumb jokes, the way I noticed when she changed her hair, but she was freshly divorced. And I respected that. "I know this is weird," she whispered, "but can you just stay here tonight? Maybe watch a movie, maybe fall asleep on the couch. I just need to feel safe." Safe. That word did something to me. "Of course," I said. Her shoulders dropped like she had been holding her breath all evening. She stood up and walked toward the kitchen. "I'll make tea," she said. I watched her move around the kitchen like this was normal. Like asking a man to sleep in her house was something she did every stormy night. But her hands were shaking slightly as she filled the kettle. I walked over and gently took it from her. "I've got it," I said. Our fingers brushed. It was small, just skin against skin for half a second. But it felt like a spark ran straight up my arm. She did not pull away quickly. She just looked at me. And this time, there was no pretending. "Ryan," she said softly, "there's something else." My heart stopped. "What?" She swallowed and leaned back against the counter. The storm roared outside, almost like it was waiting for her to speak. I keep dreaming that he comes back? Her ex-husband. And in the dream, he's angry. He walks through the house like he still owns it, like I still belong to him. Her voice cracked slightly, not from fear, from something deeper. I hate that I still feel scared, she said. I hate that I still feel like this house is not really mine yet. I stepped closer without thinking. You're not his anymore, I said quietly, and this house is yours. She looked up at me like she needed to believe that. Thunder shook the windows, and suddenly the lights went out. The house went dark. She gasped and grabbed my arm. And in that darkness, with her body pressed against mine and the storm raging outside, I realized this night was not going to be simple. Because I did not just feel protective. I felt something stronger. And when the backup power clicked on and the lights returned, she was still holding on to me. Only now she was not shaking. She was looking at my lips. And I had a feeling the strange reason she asked me to stay. The lights came back on, but neither of us moved. Emily was still holding my arm. Her fingers were warm against my skin, and her eyes were not scared anymore. They were searching. I could feel her breath on my face. Slow. Careful. Like she was trying to decide something important. I should have stepped back. I should have said something normal, like everything is fine. But I did not. Sorry, she whispered, though she did not let go. It's okay, I said. The rain hit the windows harder. The thunder felt closer now. Max barked once from the hallway and then went quiet again. Emily slowly pulled her hand away, but the space between us stayed small. Too small for neighbors, too close for just friends. Maybe we should sit down, she said softly. We walked back to the living room. She turned on a few candles since the power kept flickering. The soft light made her face look warmer, softer, less like the strong divorced woman everyone in the neighborhood saw, more like someone who just wanted to feel safe. I sat on the couch. She sat next to me, but closer than before. Our shoulders touched this time. Neither of us moved away. She handed me a cup of tea. Her hand brushed mine again, but this time she did not pretend it was an accident. Thank you for coming over, she said quietly. You don't have to thank me. I do, she said. Most people disappear when things get messy. That sentence made me look at her. Did he disappear? I asked gently. She stared at the candle flame for a few seconds before answering. He left long before the divorce papers, she said. He just stopped seeing me, stopped touching me, stopped talking to me. I felt invisible in my own house. Her voice was calm, but I could hear the pain under it. I hated that someone had made her feel that way. You're not invisible, I said without thinking. She looked at me slowly. I know, she said. You always look at me. My heart jumped. There it was, the thing we never said out loud. The storm outside felt louder again, but inside the room it was quiet, too quiet. I could hear my own breathing. I try not to, I admitted. Why? Because you were married. And because I didn't want to be that guy. She gave a small smile. You were never that guy. She turned her body slightly toward me. Her knee touched mine. Her hand rested on the couch between us, so close to my leg that I could feel the heat from her skin. Ryan, she said softly, can I ask you something strange? I swallowed. You already did. She let out a small laugh, but her eyes stayed serious. Do you think it's wrong that I don't miss him? I thought about that for a moment. No, I said. I think it's worse to miss someone who never really cared. Her eyes filled slightly, but she blinked it away. I don't miss him, she repeated. I just miss feeling wanted. That sentence hit me harder than anything else she said that night. Before I could stop myself, I reached for her hand. She did not pull away. Her fingers fit into mine like they had been waiting. You are wanted, I said quietly. The way she looked at me after that made my chest tighten. It was not fear. It was not confusion. It was hunger mixed with hesitation. The power flickered again. The room went dim for a second, then steady. She moved closer, close enough that her thigh pressed against mine fully now. I asked you to stay because I was scared, she said. But that's not the only reason. I felt my pulse in my throat. What's the other reason? She took a slow breath. Because when you're around, I don't feel broken. Those words broke something inside me in a different way. I lifted my free hand and gently brushed a strand of hair away from her face. My fingers lingered against her cheek. Her skin was soft and warm. Emily, I said quietly, we don't have to rush anything. I know, she whispered, but I'm tired of pretending I don't feel this. Her hand tightened around mine. The air between us felt electric now. Heavy, full. She leaned in first, not all the way, just enough that I could feel her breath against my lips. Tell me to stop, she said softly. I did not. Instead, I closed the distance. The kiss was slow at first, gentle, careful, like we were both testing if it was real. Her lips were warm and soft, and the moment they touched mine, every sound of the storm disappeared. She made a small sound against my mouth, almost like relief. When we pulled back, we were both breathing harder. That wasn't about being scared, I said quietly. She shook her head. No, she said, it wasn't. She rested her forehead against mine. Our hands were still tangled together. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky again, but inside her living room, something had shifted. This was no longer just about staying the night. This was about crossing a line we had both been standing near for months. And as she leaned into me again, deeper this time, I realized the strange reason she asked me to stay was not fear of footsteps. It was fear of finally admitting she wanted me. After the kiss, the room felt completely different. Emily was still sitting close to me on the couch, her hand resting in mine, her forehead leaning gently against my shoulder. The storm outside had not stopped, but inside the house everything felt calmer, almost warm. Neither of us spoke for a few seconds. We were both breathing slowly like we had just crossed a bridge that took a long time to reach. Finally, she looked up at me. I didn't plan that, she said quietly. I smiled a little. I don't think either of us did. She laughed softly, but there was still something nervous in her eyes. For months we had been careful. Friendly neighbors. Small smiles. Casual talks near the mailbox. We had built invisible walls without even saying it. But tonight those walls had fallen apart with one storm and one kiss. Emily leaned back slightly and looked at me carefully. Are you regretting it? She asked. No, I said immediately. Her shoulders relaxed a little. Good, she said, because I'm not either. She stood up slowly and walked toward the window. The candlelight followed her, outlining the shape of her hair and shoulders. She looked outside at the rain falling across the quiet street. I walked over and stood beside her. You know, she said, this house felt so empty after the divorce. She folded her arms lightly and watched the rain sliding down the glass. At night, it was the worst. Every sound felt louder. Every room felt bigger. I would sit on that couch and feel like the whole place was too quiet. Her voice was calm, but I could hear the loneliness behind it. I used to wonder if something was wrong with me, she continued. Like maybe I was not enough for him. Maybe that's why he stopped caring. I turned slightly toward her. Emily, I said gently, that was never about you. She looked down at the floor for a moment. I know that now, she said. But it took time. The thunder outside rolled across the sky again. The power flickered once more, but this time she did not seem scared. She looked back at me, and the expression in her eyes had changed. It was softer now, but also stronger. When I asked you to come over tonight, she said, I told myself it was just because I didn't want to be alone. I waited. That was only half the truth. I felt my chest tighten slightly. Oh, what was the other half? She smiled a little, almost shy. Because every time I see you, I feel safe. Those words hit deeper than I expected. You're always calm, she continued. You never push. You never stare in a way that makes me uncomfortable. And you always talk to me like I matter. I looked away for a second, embarrassed. That's just being a decent neighbor. No, she said softly, it's more than that. The rain outside started slowing slightly. The storm was beginning to pass, but the air still smelled fresh and cool. Emily turned toward me fully now. Ryan, can I tell you something honest? Of course. She took a slow breath. I noticed you long before tonight. My heart skipped a beat. You did? She nodded. Last summer, the day you helped me fix my fence in the backyard. I remembered that day clearly. The sun was bright, and we had spent 2 hours working side by side with tools and wooden boards. At the time, it felt normal, but looking back now, I realized how much we had laughed that afternoon. You barely spoke, she said with a small smile, but every time I looked up, you were watching to make sure I didn't hurt my hand with the hammer. I laughed quietly. You were holding the hammer wrong. See? She said. You noticed. She stepped closer to me again. I think that was the first moment I wondered what it would be like to be with someone kind. Her voice was soft now, almost nervous again. I tried not to think about it because I was still married. I understand, I said. But after the divorce, she continued, I kept catching myself looking at your house. My chest tightened again. I would see your porch light on at night, she said. And sometimes I wanted to walk over and knock on your door. Why didn't you? Quote. She smiled slightly, because I was afraid you might say no. The honesty in her voice made my heart feel heavy in a good way. You could have knocked any time, I said quietly. She studied my face like she was making sure I meant it. I know that now. We stood there for a moment, close again with the soft candlelight between us. Then she reached out and took my hand once more. This night was supposed to be about feeling safe, she said. And now? I asked. Her fingers tightened gently around mine. Now I'm starting to feel something else. What? She looked directly into my eyes. Hope? The word hung quietly in the air between us. After everything she had been through, hope felt like a fragile thing. Something that needed patience and care. I squeezed her hand gently. You don't have to rush anything, I said. I know, she replied. But for the first time in a long time, I actually want to see what tomorrow feels like. She leaned forward and kissed me again, slower than before, softer. This time, the kiss was not about fear or loneliness. It was about something new beginning. And as the storm outside finally started fading into quiet rain, I realized the strange night Emily had asked for might be the start of something neither of us expected. Something real. The storm had almost ended by the time Emily and I sat back down on the couch. The rain outside was softer now. The thunder had moved far away, leaving only the quiet sound of water tapping gently on the windows. The candles in the room burned calmly, filling the living room with a warm glow. Emily sat close to me again, but this time there was no nervous distance between us. Her hand rested comfortably in mine. For the first time that night, she looked peaceful. You know something funny? She said quietly. What? I almost didn't knock on your door tonight. That surprised me. Why not? She leaned back into the couch and looked at the ceiling for a moment, thinking. Because I kept telling myself it would make things complicated. I laughed softly. Tonight already feels complicated. She smiled. Maybe, she said. But not in a bad way. Quote. Max walked over and curled up near our feet, finally calm after the long storm. Emily gently ran her fingers through his fur, then looked back at me. I spent a long time trying to rebuild my life after the divorce, she said. New routines, new habits. I told myself I didn't need anyone. And now? I asked. She looked at me carefully. Now, I think maybe I was wrong about that. Her words were simple, but they carried weight. Emily had always seemed strong, independent, like someone who had already figured everything out. But tonight, I saw the softer side of her, the part that had been quietly carrying loneliness for months. I don't think anyone is meant to do life completely alone, I said. She nodded slowly. I used to think asking for help meant weakness, she said, but tonight, I realized something. What? She squeezed my hand gently. Sometimes asking someone to stay is the bravest thing you can do. The room was quiet again. Not awkward, quiet. Comfortable quiet. Emily leaned her head lightly against my shoulder. I could feel her breathing slow and steady. The tension that had been in her body earlier was gone. You make this house feel different, she said softly. How? It doesn't feel empty anymore. Those words stayed with me. Outside, the rain was almost gone now. The streetlights reflected off the wet pavement, making the neighborhood glow softly through the window. Emily sat up slightly and looked at me again. "You're probably wondering something," she said. "What's that?" "If I'll regret tonight tomorrow." I smiled a little. "Maybe I was wondering." She shook her head gently. "I won't," she said. Her voice was calm and certain. "Tonight didn't feel like a mistake," she continued. "It felt like the first time in a long time that I stopped running from my own feelings." She paused for a moment before speaking again. "And honestly, Ryan, I think I've liked you longer than I wanted to admit." Hearing that made my chest tighten in the best way. "You hit it well," I said. She laughed softly. "I tried." We both knew that was true. Months of quiet glances and careful distance suddenly made more sense. Emily stood up slowly and walked toward the hallway. "Come on," she said. "Where?" She smiled over her shoulder. "I'm not asking you to sleep on the couch." I raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure?" Quote. She nodded. "Yes," she said. "I trust you." There was something powerful about the way she said that. Trust. Not rushed, not reckless, just honest. When we reached the hallway, she stopped and looked at me again. "You know the strange reason I asked you to stay tonight?" she said. "Yeah. You said you didn't want to be alone." She shook her head slightly. "That was part of it." "What was the real reason?" She stepped a little closer. "Because deep down," she said softly, "I knew you were the one person who would actually stay." Her words were simple, but they meant everything. I realized that this night had never really been about fear or storms or strange noises in the house. It was about trust. It was about two people who had spent months pretending they felt nothing, finally allowing themselves to stop pretending. Emily smiled gently and opened the bedroom door. The rain outside had stopped completely now, and for the first time that night, the house felt quiet in a good way. Not empty, just peaceful. And as we stepped inside together, I realized something. Sometimes the strangest nights are the ones that change your life the most.